We're good?
Looks like you're ready to go. Yes.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. This is the Town of Southborough, Massachusetts Personnel Board virtual meeting via Zoom for Wednesday, September 16th. Call to order. It is 12:02. Welcome, everybody. I have a statement that I am asked to read into the record since we are virtual. So if you'll bear with me, you've heard it before. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, General Laws, Chapter 38, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place, this meeting of the Southborough Personnel Board will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information in the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and/or parties with a right and/or a requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the Town of Southborough's website at https://www.southboroughtown.com. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to watch or participate in the meeting may do so in the following manner by finding the meeting at https://www.southboroughtown.com/remote meetings. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event that we are unable to do so, despite best efforts, we will post on Southborough's website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. Thank you. And the first order of business is administrative business. We have minutes in the packet. Oh, actually, I had chatted with Vanessa briefly. Normally when doing the minutes, I would note who is from employees and others who are attending. We don't have that option if we're on Zoom. Vanessa, if we click on participants at the bottom of our screen, will we see a list or do we have to ask you to read it to us?
I can read it to you. I don't know if on your end you see the attendee list.
We do.
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Okay. Are folks comfortable with that, or they want Vanessa to read it into the record, or I can see it here? So all members of the board are present. And I see it, Vanessa. We have Mr. Ballantyne, Mr. Purple, Chief Achilles is with us. Don, I don't know who Don is.
I assume that's Don Morris.
Okay, from
the planning board,
Planning
chairman of the planning
Mr.
board.
Parent is with us, Karina Quinn is with us, Kristen Pasicane, Sarah Castle, Tim Davis, and Mr. Tim Litt is with us. Great, okay. And then my little chat box has a 1. Does that mean somebody wants to say something?
I just sent you a test message so you could see where that would pop up.
Great. So I had chatted with Vanessa briefly before the meeting. I said it's helpful for the board to know when they're interacting with employees. And if we don't check on that, and we used to note it for the record. So it's just good to know who's in the audience so we know who's getting the message. All right, thank you very much. Moving on to the packet, pages 2 to 4, we have minutes of August 12th, draft minutes. Minutes having been circulated to the board via the packet in advance of the meeting. Reading of the minutes is waived. Do we have any comments or additions, deletions from board members?
No.
And Jay, we can't see you, so you'll have to like give a little grunt or something.
Okay.
I don't see you shaking your head. I can see Dorian, Barry, and Dave shaking their heads. All right, any comments on the minutes? There being no corrections to the minutes, I see none. The meeting minutes for August 12th are approved as presented in the packet. Thanks, folks. Second order of business is a ledger sheet received from the town accountant's office, expenditure ledger. You can see that the only monies expended to date are for the ATS, the applicant tracking system. Clear Company, we discussed that at our last meeting. Any comments or questions on the expenditure ledger? Okay, great. We are now moving on to 3, employee performance evaluations and raises. So I listed first just a synchronization overview status. You have a payroll spreadsheet in the file. That's page 6 of the packet. This was provided by Mr. Ballantyne. It is the work product of Mr. Ballantyne and Ms. Pasicane. And on behalf of the board, I thank them both. And this is the guidance, this one, on what the raises will look like under the synchronization. Are there any questions? So the status of the synchronization, working with Mr. Laflamme, Ms. Hale set up folders. All of the reviews, past and present, that the board had requested according to the synchronization guideline were updated to the folders. They were made available to board members. Hopefully you had a chance to review them and review them and review them. My thanks on behalf of the board to Mr. Laflamme and to Ms. Hale and to all the department heads and managers listening and those who are not listening, who provided the documentation, Vanessa for setting up the folders and getting the documents in there. And also, of course, to Kristen, who did the cover sheets. So any questions from board members about the status of the documentation, not to the substance of the documentation, but any questions about how it all rolled out and what's in the folders?
I have a question, Betsy.
Yes, Dorian.
I just want to confirm on the
Yep.
Here. So the yellow section, so their raises are in the neutral column. This is so tiny I can barely see it with glasses on. I'm assuming that the minimum, that is what they're actually getting because they have to get the minimum amount in their grade or the minimum. So we had to change that because the numbers weren't right.
Okay, and I'll let Kristen and Brian speak to this in a moment because they're with us. In all cases, when we go to calculate a raise, if someone is below the minimum of their grade, they need to be raised. And
Okay,
we've seen that in the past when we've done reviews a few at a time.
and
I will flag them and I'll say this person needs to be raised to minimum. In this case, there was 1 or 2 instances of that where someone was not at minimum, but since we were going to be voting all the raises, I didn't flag those. It will be embedded in the raise that they're given. They'll be brought up to minimum. And I think there were just a few.
Right, so that's what that's showing us, that those people are being brought up to the minimum in their grade.
Okay, in the minimum category.
Yeah.
Yep. Did anybody else have any other questions about how Kristen and Brian did this work?
No.
Okay, great. They're here to answer questions if you have questions. Everybody good?
Yep.
Okay. So there were a couple of outstanding issues that I thought as chair ought to be handled separately. The first is 3B. We had an outstanding performance evaluation for an employee in the recreation department. This should have come to us in March. As a result of the process of collecting all the reviews, it was revealed that this employee had not received their previous review. Under the SAP, normally someone cannot receive a raise. Let me take out the SAP and I want to get this right. This is section 7. Retroactive salary increases voted by the personnel board shall not be compensated beyond July 1st of that fiscal year, regardless of the funding mechanism. But I'm told that Ms. Hale and Mr. Purple determined in connection with talking to recreation that this particular salary is funded from a revolving fund. So it would be an exception to the rule. Am I correct?
Yes, Brian Ballantyne is here as well. I'll let
Okay.
him chime in. I also brought Tim Davis over as a panelist if you had any questions for the department head.
Yeah, so this is Denise Mayer. She didn't get her FY20 review. Obviously, that's a predicate to getting her synchronization review. So we wanted to get her on the table. Technically, a department could not pay for that review for last year because FY20 is over. But I understand this can be done because recreation has a special funding mechanism. And I would ask Mr. Purple if it was his intention that this is an override of the provisions of section 7 of the SAP, because he's the one who has the co-ability with us to interpret the SAP. That's 7A.
Yes, I would agree with that, Betsy.
Okay, so this employee would not get paid if we don't override section 7.
That's correct.
Okay. I think in the future, we should be really careful to get the reviews in for the calendar year, regardless of the funding mechanism. But in this case, well, I don't want to speak for the board. I'll open it up to board comments. Is the board cool with approving an FY20 raise in FY21
Yes,
to be retroactive?
I am.
All right.
Yep, I'm good with that.
I just wanted to add that Mr. Davis is also here, the department head, that, unfortunately Denise's review fell, the week we sent everybody home and shut down all the public buildings in March. So, we're sorry that this fell through the cracks.
Thank you very much. And we thank Mr. Davis. When it was identified, he jumped right on it and did what needed to be done. So the chair, is there any other comment on Ms. Mayor? You know how I am. I'm a process person. We end up doing the right thing, but I just want to look at the SAP before we do it and make sure everybody's on board. Okay, so we have 2 reviews for Denise Mayer. This is the review dated March 17th, 2020. Chair will entertain a motion to approve a pay raise for Denise Mayer from $19.72 an hour, a 2.5% raise to $20.21 an hour. Do we have a motion?
so moved.
Thank you. A second?
Second,
All right, all in favor, and I would ask you to do this by roll call vote. Mr. Dietz,
approve, yes.
Ms. Jazinski,
Yes,
Mr. Nixon,
I have to recuse myself in as much as I sit on the Recreation Commission.
thank you, Mr. Nixon, Mr. Rubenstein,
Yes,
and Ms. Rosenblum votes in the affirmative. So the raise for FY20 is approved for Denise Mayer. And then we can take up Denise's subsequent synchronization review in the group with everyone else. Thanks very much, everyone. Moving on to 3C, we have 2 probationary reviews for employees who were hired at FY20. And I bring this to your attention only because, as you know, the SAP was changed. So the process was these employees were both hired in March. We're talking about Emily Amico, the new Board of Health nurse, and Mr. Ronald Fraser, who was hired in the facilities department. By all accounts, they are excellent additions to the workforce. They were hired in March. And you have, yesterday I sent out to you a letter that came in from Mr. Parent of the facilities department. He's Mr. Fraser's boss. And he was told in his hiring letter, does everybody have that letter, March 3rd, 2020?
Yes.
Mr. Fraser?
yeah,
Okay.
Yep.
And it specifically notes in the 3rd paragraph, his pay rate, and that under the personnel bylaw, he would be permitted a salary increase at the end of a 6-month probationary period after a successful performance evaluation is approved by the personnel board. So that kind of makes it sound like it's a given that a successful performance evaluation will be approved, but I guess we can talk about that another time. So the point here is that back in March, Mr. Fraser and Ms. Amico were promised probationary reviews. Now we know the SAP changed. So I thought it was important for this board, if they're going to grant probationary raises, to notice that they're either grandfathering these people in under the old SAP. And I wanted to take note of it because I think there's an issue when we do change the SAP, maybe we need to address this in the future. So I'll open it up to comments from the board.
I'll start. I guess I've got a couple of thoughts about this. One is the letter really, and I don't know whether both of these individuals got the same letter, whether Ms. Amico got a letter that's identical to what Mr. Fraser got, but it doesn't promise it. It says it permits an increase. So it doesn't say they're entitled to it. It says there could be one. The second point I'd make is that both of these people are going to get an increase effective July 1. So it's not like they're not going to see any increase. They are going to get probably a 2.8% increase prorated over the year, but they will get an increase. Several months before, they would have gotten whatever 6-month increase they might otherwise have gotten. So my feeling would be I would operate under the new language and not grant a 6-month increase.
I guess my concern in bringing it to the board's attention is that since I've been on the board, we have our SAP changes sewn up in February. That was the case this year. We didn't know the pandemic was going to delay town meeting. The folks involved in this were well aware that the board had recommended getting rid of probationary increases. So I'm not sure why the letter was written the way that it was, knowing that the SAP had a pretty good chance of abolishing the raises. But I also, on the other hand, we have a letter in front of us, and I don't know how the board feels about honoring the letter. It does say, to my mind, if there is a successful performance evaluation, you get a salary increase. It says permits a salary increase at the end of a 6-month period after a successful performance evaluation. So in this case, we have 2 successful performance evaluations. Anyway, I'll open it up. Other members of the board, Mr. Dietz?
Betsy, these
Yeah.
2 people should be grandfathered in. They were hired under the old SAP. The new one hadn't been approved yet. They've done the job. They've worked through COVID. They've been there. And I think the honorable thing and the correct thing for this town to do is to honor that raise as promised, especially in this letter. I would not support not giving them this 6-month probationary period raise. It's minimal money, and they were promised this. They took the job, they've done the job. They have very positive reviews, and the right thing to do for us to do is to say yes to this.
Thank you, Ms. Jasinski. Mr. Ballantyne, I don't know if it's possible. It makes my head spin when I think about trying to do this myself. The difference in compensation, if we don't give the 2.5 and we just give the 2.8, between if we give the 2.5, raise the base salary and then do the 2.8. I hate to put you on the spot, Brian. Are we talking? What are we talking? I'm sorry. I
No, that's okay. I
didn't have a chance to
to,
work this through with you.
Obviously, Emily's part-time.
Yeah.
So in her case, it would probably be very minimal amounts.
Yeah.
It's Mr. Fraser, correct? That's the other,
Yes.
yes, the other. I just need to look them up, so.
Thanks. While we're waiting, and again, I'm, another change. Normally I would be up at the townhouse at least 3 days a week, bothering Brian and Kristen and whoever else I can, Vanessa. And it's a little different now. So, Mr. Nixon, Mr. Dietz, do you have anything you would like to add?
Basically, I agree with Ms. Jasinski. I think that this goes back, the date of the letter I'm looking at is March 3rd. I think we should follow through on that letter as it was written. I don't have a copy of the other letter. I gather they both would have been set up at approximately the same time.
Yes, my understanding is Miss Amico was hired in March also. And Miss Hale, I asked her this morning if the same letter went out, and she was she was not available to check the files. I don't
did
know.
find that on the, I was able to look that up on the, to get into our server. And it is the same version with the same language.
Oh, Vanessa, good to know. So when you are at home, you have access to personnel records?
I do,
or-
to only things that have been, either saved on our network or scanned in some form or manner.
Okay.
Tom has been great about providing that access to anyone who needs to work at home during the pandemic.
Okay, so the long and short is they both received the same letter. I don't think I'd be comfortable, even if one was verbal and one was in writing, I would want to treat them both the same. That was my twist on it.
Mhm.
I think we've heard from everyone. I want to give Mr. Dietz a chance to opine if he has anything he wants to say.
Yeah, I would not be of rescinding a letter to them regarding payroll salary. If letter was what's in sent them, they were gonna get this. When I send them a letter rescinding it back, I think we should give it to them. Torian and Dave.
I'm having a little trouble with Jay's audio. I think I picked up that you want us to honor the letter. Is that what you said?
Correct.
Okay, all right. So, Brian, I don't want to hold this up too long. Seems to be
It's under, well, it's about $400 or $500.
for the
The
year.
difference for the two of them, yeah.
Okay. I guess regardless of where we end up on this, I'll just say, I think we need, again, this is an example, we need a little closer coordination with the personnel director. Because these offers get made and the board doesn't get offers, but then we get the request for the raise. And we're always at the downstream and never at the upstream. So I think I would have appreciated a little more attention, maybe before this letter was written, but I think we can always work on the communication. Definitely needs to improve. Maybe the personnel board could be part of a letter that goes out, not every letter, or just looking at the format of the letter, because I know I personally would like to phrase it a little bit differently. But in this case, we've already changed the SAP, so maybe where we need to focus is on making sure it's clearer in the SAP and through the personnel director's office, whether or not people are grandfathered on changes in the future. So we'll make a note of that. The chair will entertain a motion if anyone would like to make a motion
So move.
regarding these two probationary. What is the motion that you would like to make, Dave? We've heard 2 points of view, so.
I would make a motion that we approve the raises as outlined in the letter of March 3rd that went to both of them.
Thank you, Mr. Nixon. Oh, I guess I should ask, I was not paying attention to, I should ask if there's any attendees who would like to comment before the board votes. We would hear from non-members now. Anybody raising their hand to make a comment? All right, then. There's
Wait,
been a
Paul,
motion.
Paul's right.
Sorry, Paul
Paul
Pazinski.
wants to say something.
Mr. Pazinski, you are recognized.
Can you turn your microphone on, Paul? There
you
you
hear me?
go. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, no, I just, looks like, Madam Chairwoman, you have probably a sufficient number of votes, but you vote, the motion is made, and I'm hoping that it will be voted in the affirmative. I'm so delighted, I couldn't ask for a better employee, public health nurse, and I think that the fact that she started at a very inopportune time with a crisis before us and has done yeoman's work, bringing us along with all that she's had to do with contact tracing and everything. I don't think we're talking about a lot of money, but there again, it's your money. So it's really your decision.
Thank you, Mr. Pazinski. I don't think anyone's denying that she's done a great job, and her hiring could not have come at a better time for us or worse time for her, depending on how you want to look at things. I don't think it's a matter of merit at all. I think it's a matter of process for the board, and
Right.
I hope that's clear. However it goes, it has nothing to do with the performance of the employee. So thank you for your comments. All right, is the board ready to vote? Do we have a second on Mr. Nixon's?
Second.
All right, so now the motion is to approve the probationary raises. Mr. Dietz,
Approve, yes.
Ms. Jazinski,
Yes, approve.
Mr. Nixon,
Yes, approve.
Mr. Rubenstein,
No,
and Ms. Rosenblum votes in the affirmative. The motion passes. Oh, wait a minute, Dave, you were abstained. You abstained? Oh, no.
That was the other one.
Sorry, you abstained from the first one. Wow, I'm really out of it. Okay, sorry about that. So it is 4-1. Thank you very much. It's a good
Okay.
thing these meetings are taped now, because I get to go back and watch them and I make sure I get it all right. All right, thank you, folks. We are moving on to our last order of business, 3D, These are the performance evaluations and the FY21 raises for all SAP employees in the town employment as of June 30th, 2020, per synchronization. So I got myself a little bit confused. I referred to these as FY21 raises because I refer to them by the fiscal year in which they are granted, and we are in FY21. However, the reviews were through the end of FY20. And next year we will see reviews for the performance in FY21. So I have spoken to Ms. Hale. I think we need to come up with a vocabulary that everybody agrees on. So these really aren't FY21 raises so much as they are synchronization gap raises. I don't know. What does anybody want to call them? Because we will be seeing FY21 raises again next year, right? Isn't that what we're going to be doing in FY21?
No, there'll be 22.
Well, they'll be given in FY22, but they'll be for FY21 performance, right?
Yeah, you'll receive the bulk of them at the end of FY 21.
So I don't know what anyone wants to call them, but they are 2.8% raises. And we have received 52. So I'll just, I had a little overview and then I'll open it up for comment if anybody has anything they want to say. So we received 52 reviews for 52 employees. That includes a previous review and then either a new review or a full review, depending on the timing. This was across 19 departments. Each employee was rated on 4 performance elements, as you well know: quality of work, job knowledge; 2, productivity; 3, communication; 4, collaboration / interpersonal skills. And there was a 5th category for managers only on leadership. There were 5 possible ratings for each one of these performance elements. And these were debated, hotly debated when we revised the form in last year. The 5 categories in ascending order: unsatisfactory, does not meet expectations, meets expectations, above expectations, and exceptional. So by my count, 52 employees, each one had 4 fields. We won't even splice and dice the managers who had an additional field. If every one of the 52 employees was rated solely on the 4 performance criteria, we have over 200 rankings or little boxes that we looked at. And I guess my impression is we've seen this before, we've discussed it before, but seeing them all as a group highlighted for me, there was not a single employee who was rated unsatisfactory or does not meet expectations in any of the categories. So I'm not saying an overall rating. I'm not saying we should have had 5 employees who were totally unsatisfactory, but there was not in any of those boxes, I didn't see, a doesn't meet expectations or unsatisfactory. And you know me, I have refrained from commenting on performance of employees since I got on the board, because my twin principles are transparency, let people know what we're doing, and fairness and uniformity. We got to treat everybody the same. And I can't speak to the performance of all 52 employees because I only know a handful of them. But the ones that I work with, I do know. And I do know that all of them have room for improvement, because we all have room for improvement. And I didn't see a single comment in the vast majority of these reviews suggesting that anybody had any room for improvement. I saw one criticism of one employee, and I don't want to single that employee out, but that board knows who they are, and I applaud them for being honest. I saw one criticism. So I'm not sure what the board wants to do with this. I think the expectation is we look at them and we stamp them, because for the last 2 years, we've said we're not going to get into the review game. But it's my strong feeling that it's time for us to reconsider that decision. Something is not happening here from my perspective that needs to happen. And I had this conversation with Vanessa. Poor Vanessa, she called me this morning, as always, to see if she could help. She said she was at home. Is there anything I needed for the meeting? And we ended up talking about her review. So how awkward is that? And she took it like she always does, with equanimity. And that ought to be exceptional equanimity. But the point is, she knows she has areas she can improve on. Everybody she works with knows they have areas they can improve on. And maybe what we need to do is change the form again to include areas for improvement. And my last comment before I open it up to the board is, a lot of the reviews that I saw were not specific to the job descriptions. I saw time and again, person is a good member of the team. They're nice to the people they work with. That to me should all be a given, but I didn't see a lot of job, in a lot of them, a lot of job specific. It is Susie Ann's job to be this. She does this. It was, I've been searching for the words to say it. I saw what I consider a lot of fluff, if I can use that word. I don't know what the word, a lot of platitudes. That's great. But I think getting along with your coworkers and being polite to, these are municipal employees, being polite to the citizens goes with the job. It doesn't make you an exceptional employee that you're polite. Your job description, what you're called upon to do, and meeting your goals and being productive, those things make you exceptional. So again, I've refrained, this is a very awkward conversation to have. I've thought about how I want to present this. I thought about not saying anything, but if we don't say something, I don't know who will. Because if you read section 7 of the SAP, there aren't supposed to be raises unless this board approves them. And I've struggled with what our role is, and I'm still not sure, but I know that I didn't want to go home from this meeting, because I'm home, without saying something, that I think we can do better. And the last thing I want to say is Mr. Purple told us at one time that if we got away from talking about employee performance in a meeting, and I guess previous to all of us being here, employee performance was discussed. Mark likened it to the Jerry Springer show, and he thanked us for taking people in a different direction. And I appreciate that. And I have no desire to return to the Jerry Springer days. I didn't witness them, but Mark has told us it was unpleasant. The problem is, and we heard from Mr. Purple, that if we got away from talking about the reviews, he felt that managers would be more honest. Nobody wants to make negative comments if they know it's going to be discussed in a public meeting. I understand that. But it's been 2 years since we've been doing these by consent. I looked up the record this morning. I became chair in July 2018. And the very first meeting I presented a policy to the board, and the board approved it to handle evaluations by consent. So I think managers pretty well know by now that we're a careful board, we're circumspect. It hasn't been the Jerry Springer show for 2 years. And I still don't think that we're seeing the honesty that I want to demand on behalf of the taxpayers. There are issues with employees. You may know some of them, I know some of them, and I didn't see them in the reviews. And I don't know the best way to address it, but I know, like I said, I didn't want to go home without saying anything. So I'm sorry for the speech, and I'm done now, and I open it up to anybody else who wants to comment on their experience with the reviews. Thank you all for listening.
So
Yeah, I did have exactly the same reaction in going through these. And I think out of all the departments, there was one manager who even used the term does not meet expectations. And that manager used it on individual lines for a small number of people, but at least they were factoring that in. Not a single other manager ever used the term for anyone. And for a group this large, it's hard for me to believe everyone is, without going through, Betsy, what you said, it's hard to believe everyone is doing every aspect of their job at least to a meets expectations level. It would be beyond anything I've ever seen in my career. And what concerns me is, and we put it off this year, but we've talked about next year going to a range. And I don't see how we could possibly do a range if this is the kind of evaluations we're going to see, because everyone's going to get the top amount. Nothing's going to change. And I guess it goes to the point that Marcus made, that it's difficult to implement a merit system here, but it starts with managers doing fair evaluations and not being concerned that their employees are going to get the most that they can get. That's not the purpose of the evaluations. And all of these people, I think, should have gone through the training we did on how to do performance evaluations, that they would know better, that we would see something that was more realistic. So I share your frustration, Betsy, on where we are or where we're going to go with this, because this is not, these are just not accurate representations of the jobs that were being performed.
I agree with you as well, Barry. I mean, I don't know 95% of the people that work in town well, but I did specifically look up the people that I do know to see how those were written. And there was one of them, I'm not going to mention the name, but it's, when I was reading the description, it really wasn't about the job. It was more about what the department was going through due to COVID, not about her job and what the person was actually doing. And I just don't think that, I mean, everything was and just the experiences that I've had, I know that there's absolutely room for improvement. So just seeing that, it's back to your, how is everybody always at meets? Nobody in this town has ever done anything that's improvement. It just seems impossible. And if it was that way, we would be much more.
I share the same frustration, Betsy. I was actually quite disappointed. I didn't find that the managers were really evaluating their employees. It's almost as if the personal relationship with the employees is not allowing them to be truthful, or they don't want to hurt their feelings. They want everyone to get the same raise. I just don't feel that the managers know how to do an evaluation correctly. And I think we might want to consider possibly doing a mandatory training for all the managers. And I would not be comfortable with, we were originally going to let them do a 0 to 3%, raise and let them evaluate. I'm not comfortable that they're actually able to do that. I think we would see everyone with 3%. We're seeing everyone with 2.8. Nobody is saying anything negative. It's literally impossible. It's impossible that all of these employees are doing exceptional and everything on these. There's just no way. There's too many people here. There's just no way. I don't believe it. I'm sorry. I'm very, very disappointed in the managers, to be very honest. And I'm very frustrated with these reviews. And that's my view. I think we have to make a mandatory for them.
I'd like to add to the discussion, and I agree with Dorianne and everyone else that's spoken. With over 50 years of business experience, I can honestly say that I've never seen anything quite like these reviews that are all basically satisfactory and above. I think it's imperative that somehow we set up a meeting in a not too distant future to include the town manager and all department heads and discuss how we can move forward to come up with an efficient and accurate way of rating personnel. And that we insist somehow that all managers and supervisory personnel are truthful, honest, and forthcoming in their representations of people that they're in charge of.
And one thing that I was thinking when I was reading the reviews after seeing all this is maybe we add a line in there that's mandatory that says, please list something that they need to work on. So we literally make them call it out and say, yes, this person is a little bit inefficient in this thing, because there's no way that everybody's going to be, like you guys said, meets or expect, there's always going to be something. So maybe we add a line and make them call it out and just say, tell us something that they need experience.
I think these reviews have to be restructured. I think that they're too easy. It's too much of a simple out for the managers just to rate everybody very easily. I am so disappointed in these reviews. I can't even express how disappointed I am. Here's the problem I see also. So if you look at the goals, first of all, we don't even see what the goals are on the new form. We don't see them at all. And then I'm looking at one of the reviews. So the goals that were set for this year, we don't know if they were accomplished. We have no clue if they were accomplished. And the target date for completion and the proposed date of completion is the exact same date. What kind of a goal is that? That's not a goal that is actually something for them to strive to do or a challenge for them to do. I'm sorry, we have a problem. We have to fix this. This is not okay. And this isn't just on one review. It's on a lot of these reviews. The completion date and the assignment for a goal is all done in one day. And it's the same day it's assigned. That's not a goal, guys. That's just not a goal for them to complete during the year. I'm very frustrated. I'm sorry.
Thank you all for your comments. I appreciate this is not easy to do.
I think
Yes.
Vanessa had a question.
Yes, Vanessa, go ahead.
You're on mute.
Oh, thank you. Sorry, Jay. So when the chair and I were discussing some of these matters this morning, one of the things we talked about was, the cover sheet, the way it's been designed, doesn't show the goals, to your point, Ms. Jasinski, from the prior year to see, where did someone meet or not meet their goal. And the other area that we talked about that is not identified anywhere on the current form is, where to the valid points you have all made today, where is it written in somehow that what an employee thinks they can improve on, that kind of conversation, because some of the goals in the reviews are tied more toward professional development or, training in a specific software application or, project-based versus, performance-based. So I hate to suggest changing the form all the time because we've done a lot of work on that. But I think this conversation, again, this afternoon rather, illustrates that, there's other types of information that would be important for the board, and the employees, of course, which would result in making additional changes to the form.
The form basically gave the managers, we were putting too much trust that the managers would do the right thing.
Right.
And they just didn't. So I think the form would have been honest about, like Dorian said, they're just taking the easy way out. They're filling out what we want to see, and they're just being done with it. They were not to be. And if that's the case,
They're not thoughtful reviews.
not at all. If that's the case, then let's go back and change it so that they have to answer everything that we want now. We're giving them the benefit of the doubt, and it just didn't work.
It
So
failed.
maybe we have to take it back. Yeah.
Failed
Just a
miserably.
couple of comments relative to what you were talking about. We did have a training for managers. I can't remember the gentleman's name. He was lovely. Vanessa and Barry vetted the list, and I participated pre-COVID. It was over at the Public Safety Building, and department heads
I'd like to
talked
see how
about.
many managers showed up.
Oh, all the department heads were there. I think I can look back. I probably gave you a report on it. I just don't remember. The room was filled. Mr. Purple was there, Ms. Hale. Department managers talked about problem employees when they were there in the room and how to handle it. I thought the gentleman was lovely. The conclusion of it was so successful. We wanted to have him come in and do another training for citizens on boards and committees. We have as you know, because you're now experts on the reviews, we have a portion that come from, conservation and boards and committees. So we thought it was so successful, but unfortunately we had to cancel that due to the COVID. Mark Way, his name was Mark Way, lovely gentleman, talked about how to handle employees with issues. To me, it's a culture thing. I look at the top, and again, this is an awkward conversation to have. We delegated the performance evaluation form to Mr. Purple. He must have thought it was sufficient. Obviously, we made some changes. It was a result of a process, but at no time did Mr. Purple or Ms. Hale highlight that they thought there was a problem with the form. Now, Mr. Purple's been dealing with the department heads. He's been our town manager since 2012 or 13. Ms. Hale has been here for 20 years. If there were issues in the system that predate all of us, I go back 3 years. Mark goes back 7 or 8, Vanessa 20. I feel like it's all great to talk about it now. We spent 6 months talking about that form. For example, one thing that did not come out during the discussions in the forum, and I'm disappointed about this. I had long thought that chairs of committees or board members who deal with employees, such as we do, I hate to use Vanessa as an example. She works with personnel board, felt that we should review her. And this was something that was rejected. I don't want to name names. People told me it wasn't done. Flash forward, I talked about it once a year at review time and it never went anywhere. Flash forward to the selectmen's goal setting meetings in July and August. Members of the Board of Selectmen wanted to have input into employee reviews, at least for the BOS employees. And Mr. Purple told the Board of Selectmen, it's a taped meeting, it's not a secret, that at one time he understood it predated his tenure. There was a section on the performance evaluation for board comment. So why wasn't this included? And again, maybe it's all on our board. That's why we're having this discussion. Maybe we can't rely on anybody else in town and we need to design a form that has all this. So leads me to the present. Certain members of the Board of Selectmen wanted to have input into select employee reviews. And I would have no way of knowing if that ever got done. I'm the chair of the personnel board. I'm guiding this board in approving performance evaluations. I know from a public meeting, because it's on Zoom, that at least two, maybe 3 members, a majority of the Board of Selectmen wanted input into some reviews. And I don't see a box on those. I know who the reviews were that they wanted input on because it's BOS employees. It's not a secret. Ms. Lori Esposito, Vanessa Hale, Carol Ostrich. But I don't see any addendum. So then I have to assume that Mr. Purple, who did these reviews, incorporated their feedback, but how would I know? And I really think it's a bigger discussion to have with the Board of Selectmen, at least insofar as the reviews in the BOS department, because we have no way of knowing. We're gonna approve these raises and I don't know if the Board of Selectmen input got put into the reviews because it's not called out. So I think we need to do that. We need to add an addendum. And I don't know if Mr. Purple wants to speak to whether or not the selectmen input was incorporated somewhere in the reviews. Maybe he could speak to that because that's a piece that's still out there in my mind. Is Mr. Purple here?
Sure. Yeah. No. So there were no comments. So it's kind of interesting, Betsy. The board never gave comments as a board. Okay. So the Board of Selectmen did not have comments that they officially submitted. So I did have 3 members of the board who submitted comments. Some of those comments were in line with things that I had in the review. Some of them were not things that I included. So I changed the review or added some things into the review, into my comments to incorporate those. And some of the comments that I received, quite frankly, are not things that you put in reviews. So that was the breakdown of kind of the categories of things that I received from the board members.
Thank you for that report. So if I'm hearing you, we need to, the Board of Selectmen needs to decide how that process would work moving forward.
Well, I
The
think
comments should come from the entire board. And if I'm hearing you correctly, perhaps some of those folks need training as well as to what goes into a review.
yeah, I think it goes back to, and as I had said to you in a previous email, which you alluded to, I think that there should be, a comment section, for boards and committees, that go on to this. Some of the boards and committees, like I said, conservation, for example, Ms. Danza is reviewed by the commission. And I believe that they designate one person, whether it's the chair, to do that. But in cases such as, since we're picking on Miss Hale, I guess we might as well stay there. Is that, I review her, but she does have responsibility to the Board of Selectmen. She does have responsibility to the Personnel Board. So there should be some opportunity, for comments to be received. But again, it's, I don't want to take 5 sets of comments. It should be, these are comments from the Personnel Board. Dave Nixon is happy. Barry Rubenstein is not happy. Dorian Jasinski is ambivalent. Whatever, but you just got to decide how the comments, are going to be constructed from the board. Because I don't want to list, that various positions of different people. It should be, if we're getting comments from the board, they should be board comments.
Just to correct for the record, Dorian Jasinski is never ambivalent.
Yeah, that's why I said it, because I know it just was so far from being true that it was okay.
And I just want to inject a little humor because this is a difficult conversation to have, but I think it's a necessary one. I feel like if I've been on the board long enough now that I've become part of the problem if I don't become part of the solution. And I think that we definitely need to have a powwow with your bosses, Mr. Purple, and with you, because you do a large segment of the reviews. And even though other people don't see them, you set the tone for reviews.
Mhm.
And I found some of your reviews to have the same, obviously, if I have a problem with all the reviews, implicitly, I have a problem with some of your reviews. And I thought about this for a long time. And for me, it gets down to expectations. What are people's expectations? I would have done very different reviews for some of these employees and said very different things. But again, it's what are you're the boss of these people, and what your expectations are is a large part of it. I remember when my kids were little, the only arguments I ever had with them were when they disappointed my expectations. So you sit down and you come up with a common list of expectations. That way, when the kid doesn't clean their room, everybody knows the kid was supposed to clean their room. So in the same vein, I think part of the problem is, and again, I hate to single out Vanessa, but she's been in the town 20 years and her review notes that her job has changed drastically over 20 years. That's interesting, but it's a review for a 12-month period, or in this case, it got truncated a little bit because of synchronization, a review for a 9-month period. I don't really need to know that her job changed. I need to know what her job was for the period that she's being reviewed and if she met. And that has to do with what are the expectations for Vanessa's job. And the job description that I have for her is very old. It hasn't been revised. I could pull it out. I think, Vanessa, is your job description, are you one of the ones from 2006, 2011? Your job has changed. And I understand that in some respects, Ms. Hale's job changed when I joined the personnel board because I'm a very different chair than chairs you had before. Ms. Hale was responsible for the minutes, the agenda, the packets, and I do that because I want it done in a certain way. And the way that I did it was inconsistent with the way Ms. Hale did it. So for my tenure, I take care of those things. I have certain expectations that may have been different than previous chairs. So Vanessa's job changed when we were building a public safety building. When I would talk to her, she would be busy with those things. So maybe her job description needs to be updated more frequently than 2006. How do we do an evaluation of someone and say whether or not they met the expectations of the job if we don't have a job description that's current? I think that's the problem, right?
That's-
Expectations.
There is a chat that came in from Sarah, if you wanted to read that on your right.
A chat came in.
She, Ms. Cassell made some comments in the chat field, which you should be able to see if you click on the chat button at the bottom of your screen. Or I can read it if you like.
Sure. Ms. Castle thinks we're making some assumptions, unfortunately, about how department heads are filling them out, and she's welcome to speak. Yes, is she with us?
Sure, hang on one second.
Absolutely.
Let me just move her over as a panelist.
And she makes an excellent suggestion and something I've been thinking about. She ends her remarks by saying, could each department have a liaison from the personnel board? And I was thinking about that before Sarah joins us. At one time, and perhaps they still do, advisory, the financial folks had someone who was a liaison to each department. Advisory makes recommendations about the budget. Dorianne can speak to that. She was on advisory for several years, so they need to know the departments. Maybe personnel board needs to do likewise. I see two models. We either back off and stop talking about performance evaluations, or we start talking about them and then people think we don't know what we're talking about. We only see the proof is in the pudding. And I'm happy to hear from department heads, and I understand this is a difficult discussion, and yes, we're making some assumptions. So maybe we need to become more active in a model akin to advisory board. This was 19 departments. Maybe we need to split them up and talk to them more in depth and work with them. I don't know what the answer is. I'm happy to hear from Ms. Castle if she's here.
I am. Can you hear me?
We can, Sarah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks for your comment.
Of course. I just want to say I recognize how complicated this is, and I appreciate the purview that is under the personnel board to look at these evaluations, and certainly that is concerning that across the board there seems to be no room for improvement based off of what you're seeing. And so I think I'm just personally, I can only speak for myself, not on behalf of all of the department heads, but it pains me to see how frustrated the personnel board is with this process. I personally spent an immense amount of time being very thoughtful and considerate about the employees I was evaluating. And so, but it may not be reflected as such in the form that you're looking at. And so it feels as though, just like you had mentioned, Betsy, about possibly having a liaison from the personnel board to have an opportunity to sit down with each department head. I realize that's, putting some additional work, but, I just think, at least I can speak on behalf of my department, we're unique and we have positions within our department. It's like comparing apples and oranges between one employee and the other. And it's just a difficult process. And so I would appreciate some guidance on how to, what the personnel board is looking for and how that translates for my department specifically. And I wonder if other department heads would feel similarly. Thank you. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you, Ms. Castle. Not an easy discussion to have, and we appreciate your participation. Again, we are looking at these in the aggregate. So, and I think your point on perhaps having a liaison with each department is very well taken. It is something I was thinking about. Are there any other department heads? I see several attendees. Anyone else want to speak on this? Is that Mr. Parent with a hand up?
Yes, let me just move him over so he can
Okay.
talk. And you're muted, John. Can you unmute? Thanks.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon, Mr. Parent.
No, I can totally appreciate the frustration if someone's getting exceptional down the board. But I do think it's very important to understand that when we have meets expectations, that doesn't mean they're perfect. That does still say there's room for improvement without saying it's less than meets their basic job criteria. And I kind of get a feel that's what part of the, I guess, lockup is here right now, is people are looking for, in the old system would be 1 through 5, I believe it was, a 3 was meets expectations. If you got below a 5, it means you need an improvement. Well, to me, a meets expectations does not mean you're perfect by any stretch of the imagination. It means you can do your basic job functions and you do them well, but it doesn't mean you're a superstar. Now, there's certain aspects of each of my employees where they are absolute superstars, but they do get some meets expectations in the reviews also, which to me says you can do your job. It's not in a point where it's disciplinary, but there's still room for improvement. So I think a lot of it comes down to how we individually view this form. So maybe there does need to be some more clarity with the form itself. And I too do think a liaison may not be a bad idea in these situations.
Are you done, Mr. Parent?
Yeah.
Thank you for your comments. Like I said, I think it gets down to expectations. For whatever reason, the 5 members of this board had a certain expectation. We did not discuss it prior to the meeting. That wouldn't be kosher under open meeting law. And we all arrived kind of in the same place. Yet we hear from the department heads, they seem to have more similarities than differences. I just feel like a lot of what I saw, and someone may have already spoken to this, a lot of what I saw was not job specific. Suzanne has this job description. Suzanne is supposed to do this. It was a lot of, Suzanne's a great member of the team. A lot of, I don't want to say fluff, it's important stuff. They contribute, they're friendly, they talk to their coworkers, they smile for the public, but not a lot of job specific stuff. And there are issues that go on in this town and problems that happen. Maybe I hear about them more than others because I'm the chair. And none of that was reflected in the reviews. The reviews that I saw, 52 employees, paint a picture of a town where we have one employee who possibly could have been a little more polite once. And that was pretty much it. Nothing about the problems I hear. I get calls all the time. Aren't you on the personnel board? Is this person one of your people? Why were they so this? Why did they do that? Big issues in town that happen. Yet it's never reflected in the review. I don't know how it's handled for the unions. I don't know if they're reviewed, but I know nothing about that. But maybe we need to just have all employees be the same and stop talking about SAP reviews. Part of the goal setting meeting that the Board of Selectmen had, Mr. Purple was asked about the reviews that he does for the managers who have contracts. Department of Public Works, the superintendent, she actually has a statute. It's not her statute, it's Department of Superintendents of Public Works statute. Since 1991, they have been contract employees. Then there are a couple other state statutes by which Mr. Valentine's position, treasurer, accountant has one. The assessor can have a contract. Town accountant can have a contract. Although our latest town accountant, Ms. McAuliffe, does not. Her predecessor, Ms. Krieger, did. Mr. Purple was asked how he reviews the contract employees. He was asked by the Board of Selectmen at one of the goal setting meetings, and he said he does not use this form, the form that we're using for the SAP employees. When he drafted this for us, he called it Town of Southborough Non-Union Performance Evaluation, but that's not actually accurate, I learned, because he doesn't use it for the contract employees. So just to clarify, so we're all on the same page, and for those who are listening, we have 4 types of employees in Southborough. Those subject to collective bargaining who are not included in the SAP. Independent contractors, I guess they aren't employees, so they're not included in the SAP. We have managers who have contracts by state law that are allowed to have contracts, and then we have SAP employees. So we really have 3 different types of employees. Collective bargaining, union people are not covered by the SAP. We've got our 60 people in the SAP, or 52 people. We have a couple of people who did not get reviews in this cycle. So even though we got 52 employees, we actually have a few more employees. Those that started after July 1 were not included in this batch. So we have, at any given time, 55 to 60 SAP employees, and then we have contract employees. Mr. Purple told the Board of Selectmen that he does not use this form for the contract managers. He prefers to have a conversation with them. And sometimes something may go in writing, he said, but generally not in writing. He can speak to that. The point I'm trying to make is he doesn't use this performance evaluation form. So maybe it's time to just stop doing performance evaluations for SAP employees. I don't know, because it's not happening for other people. I don't want to punish SAP employees because they're under the SAP, but we either need to fix it or we need to get rid of it. And I don't know what the answer is. I don't think it's fair to have a manager who fills out these reviews but isn't subject to being reviewed. Part of how you review someone as a manager is how they manage. So if we have a contract employee and Mr. Purple is having a conversation with them, but he's not reviewing them in writing, and then personnel board is looking at how they review people, whoever comments on how they manage people. There's a big disconnect there. I don't know if I'm being clear about that because I don't want to use names. But again, this is very hard to do in an open meeting because you don't want to use names. But there isn't a.
Betsy,
Yes,
can
Dave,
I'd like to make a suggestion that
please.
following up on a comment that was made earlier, that I think it would be beneficial for everybody concerned, both the personnel board, department heads, and various personnel, if each member of the personnel board was assigned whatever, three different departments, whatever, to act as a liaison and enter into some discussions and then come back to the personnel board with their findings, commentary, and so forth, so that we can get a little better sense overall as to whether there are variations within the different parts of the community, of the various departments. I'd like to see us move forward in that direction.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. Does that sound good to the board?
Yeah, I mean, one of the reasons why I was in favor of moving away from what we were doing when I came on the board, which was sort of going through each evaluation and making a decision, was that I had no idea what most of these people did and didn't feel like I was in a position to assess how accurate the performance evaluation was. So it was sort of a pro forma thing. I think if we each spent more time working with a distinct group of departments and became more knowledgeable about both the people in the department and what their functions were and how the people perform those functions, I think both I'd be able to better, not sure guide is the right word, but work with the managers in creating what I would feel at least would be a more honest and accurate assessment of the performance. So I think it makes sense to me.
Anybody else want to comment on that point?
I think it's a great idea to have liaisons for the departments, so.
What I would suggest then is that each member of the board send me a list of their departments that they would like to work with. You know what they are. Just go to the OneDrive file that Vanessa set up for us with Tom. There's a list of every department who submitted reviews. Give me your top 10 in some order, and then I'll juggle them around. I'll try to give you at least your first, if not your first and second choices, and then make some assignments. How does that sound?
Sounds like a plan.
Great.
Works for me.
And I think, Dave, you make an excellent point. Let's start having these discussions before we attempt to revise the form, because a
Right.
revision is come. We've all recognized that it had certain immediate shortcomings. For example, the new form doesn't tell you who reviewed it on the cover sheet. It doesn't tell you the period being reviewed. So obviously just some technical things we need to fix. Then there are some bigger issues that need to be resolved. Is this the form that we want to be using? Does it suit our needs? So I think that's great. I think I would like to have a discussion as a board about, before we go off to talk to the departments, I'm not sure what guidance I'm going to be giving them. And maybe we did reserve a space for next Wednesday. Maybe we should meet again next Wednesday. Think about this for a week. Think about what were the issues you saw and how do you think they could best be addressed? Does that make sense?
It's fine by me.
Is that okay with everybody? September 23rd at noon? I don't think it needs to be a long meeting. Now that we're all out in the, again, sometimes it takes more than one meeting to do this. Because we are a public body and we don't talk about these things in between meetings, none of us knew what the others were thinking before today. I think it's been a good discussion, a necessary discussion. Let's come back in a week and we can maybe have some common understanding of what we're going to do as we go out into the world. And if you send me your assignments that you would like to have, the departments you'd like to be a liaison for, we can do that next week. All this begs the question of what do you want to do with 52 reviews that are pending for today? That's the.
I actually have a question. I'm looking at last year's review with the new pay rate, and then the current pay rate on the new one is not what it was at the raise from last one. It's an $1,800 difference.
I don't know what you're referring to.
I know. I'm not comfortable with voting on this. I think there's a.
What are you looking at?
Well, I don't want to talk about an individual's.
Okay, so just a little background. So normally, if you take the first, you got two reviews, the current one and the previous one. Person was making $20 an hour. They're up for a 2.5% raise.
Yep.
Simple math. The department head multiplies $20 an hour by the new 2.5 and requests the new raise. That cover sheet is then checked by Ms. Pasicane in payroll. You've seen her initials. Shout out to Kristen. Thank you so much. She did that for each one of the employees now. But the math we don't do the math the same. So let's say we have an employee who was making $20 and now they're up for a 2.8. You don't get to their new rate by multiplying the old rate by 2.8 because there's proration. That's what that spreadsheet is. Some of these employees would not have been entitled to a raise on July 1st. Ms. Hale is a November cycle. Someone else is December. Someone else might not have been due till next March. Mr. Ballantyne and Ms. Pasicane did that spreadsheet that is in the file, and everybody gets prorated. So the old math that we do, that's why we asked all the department heads, ask for the raise, ask for what you're looking for, up to 2.8, and Kristen and Brian will do the math for you.
Right, but
So does that solve your question?
Rate at the end of the review last year should be the current pay rate on the new review.
Yes, and none of this is confidential. Pay rates are not confidential. Comments about employee performance, that's another issue. So if you have a question about a pay rate on an employee, you're saying the pay rate that they had in FY20?
So I'm looking at last year's, I'm looking at the old review.
Yeah.
The one where we got the 2.5%.
You can name names. This is not, if you're looking at a specific document and you have a question, we have Brian and Kristen here. We should answer it now. And this is not privileged. Feel free.
All right, so I'm looking at Sarah Cassell's review.
Sarah Castle, Youth and Family Service. Yes, ma'am.
I have a proposed pay rate at the end of the raise from last year. So that rate should be the current pay rate on this new review. And it is not the same. So
What was her pay? I don't have the documents in front of me. What was her pay rate for FY20?
So the current pay rate, well, I don't know. I don't think we want to discuss numbers on here.
Excuse me?
You want me to give numbers?
These are all public documents.
Okay.
Hey, the spreadsheet that is in the packet, Dorianne, is a public packet. If you have a question about someone's pay rate, now is the time to have the discussion. If there's an issue with math,
I'm not comfortable saying somebody's pays, what they're getting paid for on a public.
looking at the
document,
it's in the packet. It's posted on the town website.
So everybody's seeing all these reviews?
They're not seeing the reviews. Look at the spreadsheet that's in the packet.
Are they seeing the cover page?
Yes. Got it? It's all there. I am looking at Ms. Castle's review from FY20. The proposed pay rate as initialed by Ms. Pasicane is exactly what appears on the FY21.
Right. but
Kristen?
the-
Kristen's work is usually pretty good. I don't think I've caught a mistake in math yet. If you
No,
look
I'm
at the-
I'm not good at math. I just see a discrepancy between the previous review, the proposed pay rate increase with 2.5.
was $36.54 an hour.
It's not broken down on these. It's,
It is, Dorian. Dorian, I'm looking at the cover sheet from May 1st. Are you looking at a cover sheet from May 1st, 2020?
I am 5/1.
Okay, initialed by Ms. Pasicane on 5/12/20?
Initialed on 9/2/2020.
Okay, you're looking at two different documents. You
Okay,
just said
the
the,
one I have is not initialed.
okay, let's back up. There, you said, what do we do when the FY20 review doesn't match the FY21 review? And it does. And if you have a question and
And
you
let it
feel,
go and I'll just, fine. Because
does
that's
anybody
not
else have a question
I
on
printed-
this?
I printed the documents on what was sent to me. I printed them. They are in front of me.
Okay,
Do not-
so we want to walk this through with you. You have a May 1st, 2020 review for Ms. Castle, correct?
I have a May 1st date, 2020, and an 8/20/2020.
Okay, so let's do the May 1st one first. Is it initialed by Ms. Pasicane on 5/12?
No, and I printed this out right from what we were sent.
Okay, what I told you before is Ms. Pasicane was working in tandem with us and updating these as we were. So in some cases, she went back in and you may have missed something. But if you went to Ms. Castle's file on the OneDrive right now, you would see Ms. Pasicane has a sheet. These were all initial. I don't see where the issue is. There's a May 1st sheet for Ms. Castle, initialed by Ms. Pasicane back in May, and her proposed pay rate of $36.54 an hour is the same one that appears as the current pay rate on the August one. That was initialed by Ms. Pasicane on September 2nd. In this case, I believe the system worked. If you have an issue with it,
I'm looking at the documents that we were sent.
what do you,
I can't look at anything that I don't have, Betsy.
what are you looking at that is a problem?
All I'm saying, and my question was, if a proposed pay rate that she got from last year was her amount she was getting paid, that current pay rate should be reflective of the last raise, and it is not. There is a difference. So that I'm just asking, is that a typo or is there something I'm missing here? Because
I don't see what you're, yes, you are correct. The pay raise they were given before should now be the current pay rate. And for this employee, it is on my documents.
it is
That
not in my
are in the
document that I
OneDrive.
have in front of me. So that's why I'm asking. I don't
can't-
care.
I
wanna
can't
be
resolve
direct.
this
I'm just
remotely.
I'm trying to keep the paperwork straight. It is not the same. And that's why I think there was a typo. That's why I'm asking. Should she get a raise? Absolutely. She does a great job. That's not a question for me. I'm asking why there's a difference. What the number was not carried over correctly is what I'm looking at. So I don't know.
And
How
I'm not sitting at your desk, but I'm telling you that I have the documents and there may be a glitch. Did anyone else see this problem?
I'm looking at it.
I don't. I mean, if you look at the cover page that's hand initialed September 2nd, it says her current base rate is $36.54. And that's what's reflected on the spreadsheet.
No, I see that. I see that, Barry. That is correct. But that was not the number. If you look on the 5/1/20 sheet, which is what she got last year for the 2.5% raise, or when she got the 2.5% raise, that is not the same number.
I think Dorian, look at your 5/120. Are you looking at it? Is it initialed by Kristen on 5/12?
No, because that we don't have it. It's not here on the documents that we were sent. I don't have that it's initial
Okay.
from Kristen. And this is last year's.
Wait a second.
Again, this is last year's. This is not,
Dorian, we did Sarah's review in May. I have a copy of it from the board packet in a separate file. It's initialed by Kristen. It's what we saw, and it says 3654. I can't go into the one. Vanessa, do you have access to the OneDrive?
Yes.
Can you look at Sarah's file? And because everything I have lines up perfectly.
sorry, Sarah.
No, it has nothing to do with Sarah. You see something, say
It
something. and-
doesn't, it's not
Yep.
I
So
think
the
the,
right number. So
Okay.
based on what I have in front.
Vanessa's gonna speak. Dorian, Vanessa's in the file. We'll let her
Yeah.
speak to what's in the file. Thanks.
so the three files for Ms. Castle are the FY21 eval, the Kristen Pasicane initialed current cover sheet, and
Mhm.
Sarah's January 2020 evaluation.
Okay, I know what the problem is.
So,
I'm gonna tell you right now what the problem is. Personnel Board, under the synchronization guideline, asked all department heads to submit the previous review when they gave the new one. The previous review that the department head submitted to us is not the official copy. Because last year, when the review was done, the department head or the commission sends it to Vanessa and me. We give it to Kristen to initial the cover sheet. Kristen initials it, she does a great job, and then gets put in the personnel file. And I realized early on that instead of having the department head send their copy of the review, we should have had Vanessa or Kristen pull them from the personnel files and scan those. Because in some cases, the cover sheet that got uploaded that came from Ms. Castle's commission was not the final one, because that's why we have Kristen do QC.
That's why the number is different then. Okay,
Yeah.
that answers my question, because it shouldn't be different. It should
Okay.
be carried over. Got it.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
Sorry,
glad we
Sarah.
could solve that. No problem. That's what we're here for. Now's the time. So, as a group, the concerns that have been expressed, does that warrant holding off on the raises, or do we want to approve the raises as is and make a fresh start moving forward? I will open up to comments. Tough questions. I'm full of them today.
Well, we can't change the reviews. The managers have done the reviews the way they are. We've looked at them. We may not be happy the way that they've been handled, but the employees need their raises. So I would make a motion that we vote to approve the raises as submitted.
Yeah, I would agree. I think we've gone through a lot of steps, but the bottom line is we haven't really changed anything. And so it's no different than in past years where everybody gets whatever figure we decide. And so I think we move forward, we try to fix things moving forward, but for now, just sign off on these and see if we can do better next time.
I agree.
Anybody else want to comment?
I agree
James?
with what they said. Now, are we still planning on having a meeting next week?
I think we should, to discuss moving forward. I don't want to lose the momentum.
Right.
So
Okay.
it's the will of the board that we move forward. I think that's the appropriate thing to do. I agree with the comments that have been expressed. So then the last question is process. These are not on a consent agenda. I think they need to be read into the record and the board needs to approve them. And we can do a separate motion for each of the 52 employees, or I can read them all off and we can do one motion. I don't think it matters, but our practice is these reviews get read into the record, so they're on the record.
I would say, I think it can be done all as one motion if you read them all and
Okay,
Totally.
lumps.
is everybody good with that?
Yeah,
All right, so I would like to take a 2-minute break because I'm then gonna read 50 reviews into the record. I mean, raises into the record. Do you mind if I take a break for a minute and a half?
Oh, go ahead.
no,
All right, great. We'll We'll see you back here at 1:28. Thank you, folks. Okay. Oh, okay, waiting on Dave.
Looks like everyone is back now.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, so we're going to do these raises for synchronization, all as one motion. So I will read them. I'm gonna welcome anyone to make a motion, and I'll just read the names and the positions and the rates into the record. All right. Corin Diaz, Deputy Assessor, current pay rate $27.84, a 2.8% raise to $28.03 an hour. Barbara Speary, Business Administrator 1, Board of Assessors and Board of Health, from a current pay rate of $24.52, proposed increase 2.8 to a proposed pay rate of $24.79. Emily Amico, Public Health Nurse in the Board of Health, from $35.50 an hour to a 2.8% increase to $36.27, $36.27. Lori Esposito, Executive Assistant, Board of Selectmen, from a current pay rate of $29.94, 2.8% increase to $30.45. Vanessa Hale, Assistant Town Administrator under the Board of Selectmen, current pay rate $43.51, increase 2.8% to a new rate of $44.48 per hour. Carol Ostrich, Administrative Assistant in the Board of Selectmen, current rate $25.38, 2.8% increase, $26.06 per hour. Katie Berry, Zoning Board Administrative Assistant, Building Department, from a current pay rate of $22.00 an hour, 2.8% increase to $22.46 an hour. Julie Ann Lammy, Business Administrator 1 in the Building Department, current rate $23.58, 2.8% increase to $24.19 an hour. Lori Lavoli, Building Commissioner, Building Department, current pay rate $46.03, 2.8% increase to $47.31 per hour. Melissa Danza, Conservation Agent for the Conservation Commission, Current pay rate, $33.38 an hour, 2.8% to $33.67 per hour. Marika Munsif, Economic Development Coordinator for the Economic Development Committee. Current pay rate, $25.63 an hour, 2.8% to $26.20 per hour. Frank Durkin, Maintenance Technician in the Facilities Department. Current rate, $27.62 per hour, increase 2.8 to $28.09 per hour. Ronald Fraser, Maintenance Technician, current pay rate, $26.75 an hour. And I just have to stop for a minute. Kristen and Brian, that $26.75 would be with the probationary raise or not? Do we need to do that separately?
Brian, are you available to answer that question?
Yeah, I think we need to pull out and maybe go back to pull out Emily. I see by Mr. Fraser's hiring letter, his rate was set at $26.75 and the 2.8 would be on the $26.75. So he wouldn't be getting his probationary increase.
Correct.
Okay, so what I'm going to do, folks, I'm just going to pull out Ronald Fraser. We haven't put him into the memo, and we'll just pull out Emily and Miko, and we'll do those separately because they need to be calculated based on their new rates. Is that correct? Does that work?
Yep.
Okay, I'm not going to start reading from the beginning. The part where I read Emily and Miko and Ron Fraser, we'll just do those separately. Thank you all. And we can do those. We can hit those at the meeting next week. We'll give Brian and Kristen time to do the new math since we just approved the pay rate. And with respect to Denise Mayer, Kristen was proactive. She asked me ahead of time, and in doing the 2.8 cover sheet, did I want to assume the board was going to give the 2.5 or should we wait? And I said, assume that that will be done. And so we should be fine when we get to Denise Mayer. Right, Kristen?
Correct.
I think so. Okay.
Yep, that's correct.
All right. So we're going to continue. We're going to skip Mr. Fraser. Nothing personal, Mr. Fraser, and we'll deal with that separately with Ms. Amico. Next is John Parent, Facilities Director in the Facilities Department. Current pay rate, $41.43 an hour, 2.8 to $42.59 per hour. Michael Santasoso, Maintenance Technician, Facilities Department. Current pay rate, $26.64, 2.8 to $27.33 an hour. Susan A. Wood, Business Administrator 2 in the Facilities Department. Current pay rate, $26.94 an hour, 2.8 to $27.38 an hour. Alicia Porter, Administrative Assistant in the Fire Department. Current rate, $23.14 an hour, 2.8 to $23.65 an hour. Valerie DeAngelis, Library Associate, from current pay rate of $19.11, 2.8 to $19.53 an hour. Ryan Donovan, Library Director, current pay rate $40.03 an hour, 2.8 to $40.78 an hour. Patricia Ellis, Senior Library Assistant, $27.84 current rate, 2.8 to a new rate of $28.48 an hour. Michaela Fiore Keys, Library Associate, current rate $18 to 2.8 to a rate of $18.38. Kim Ivers, Children's Librarian, $33.45 an hour, 2.8 to $33.68 an hour. Catherine Colenda, Library Associate, $18 an hour, 2.8 to a rate of $18.38 an hour. Carol Logan, Library Assistant, current pay rate $20.50 an hour, 2.8 to a proposed pay rate of $20.59 an hour. Christopher McGinn, Library Associate, current pay rate $22.51, 2.8 to a proposed a new pay rate of $22.80 an hour. Evangelia Leah Selleck, Senior Library Assistant, current pay rate $21.71 an hour, 2.8 to a pay rate of $22.20.
Sharp I can borrow. Yeah, I got scissors around here somewhere.
Mariana Sorensen, Library, did someone have a comment? I heard voices. Mariana Sorensen, Library Associate, $18.23 an hour, 2.8 to 18.74 per hour. Amy Townsley, Library Assistant, current pay rate $21.53 an hour, 2.8 to $21.76 an hour. Kelly Wynand, Library Associate, current pay rate $18 an hour, 2.8 to a proposed pay rate of $18.38 an hour. Alicia Winsky, Library Associate, current pay rate $18 an hour, 2.8 to $18.38 an hour. Sarah Hecker, Business Administrator 1 to the Planning Department, current pay rate $27.16 an hour, 2.8 to $27.29 an hour. Karina G. Quinn, Town Planner, $40.28 an hour, 2.8 to $41.34 an hour. Cindy McLeod, Police Business Administrator, $31.49 an hour, 2.8 recommended to a rate of $32.14 per hour. Ryan Newell, Police Lieutenant, $45.65 per hour, 2.8 to a new rate of $46.87 per hour. Jean Johnson, Business Administrator 1 in the Department of Public Works, $28.59 an hour, a rate of 2.8% to $28.98 per hour. And I'm not sure. We had two for Ms. Johnson. One said 2.75, and then the latest one was 2.8. Okay, 2.8.
Why was there two?
I can
Kristen
speak to that.
revised them, and in some cases, I think a couple of them, one unrevised one went into the file.
So which one is the correct one, the 2.8 or 7.5?
The 2.8 was the one that was initialed. All right. Vanessa, did you want to speak to that?
Yes, I just wanted to add, when that review came through, we checked with the DPW director. She mistakenly wrote down 2.75 instead of 2.8. So that was the correction.
I think in the best of all possible worlds, the reviews would have come in and Ms. Pasakane would have been given the time to do her quality control. She would have uploaded only her final documents, but that's not what happened. The board wanted to see things as they came in. In some cases, there were issues. And as I think I explained in an email to you in between meetings, we had Ms. Pasakane proceeding on her parallel track to do her QC. So I don't want there to be any suggestion that this has anything to do with Kristen's work. She is the wind beneath our wings. The reason we know these numbers that I am reading off today is due to Kristen. In the best of all possible worlds, she would have been allowed to do her QC and you never would have seen any of the sausage get made, but that's not how it worked. Because we wanted to upload the documents as soon as possible, she proceeded on a parallel path, and that's why you will see for any individual employee, you might see a cover sheet and then a second one. And to the extent she had to update anything, I asked her to write revised on the document. So you might see a trail where there was a cover sheet, it got fixed, it wasn't quite correct, and then you will see Kristen's revised cover sheet. So I just wanted to make it clear it has nothing to do with Kristen, had to do with the time and the process, and we did the best we could under the circumstances. Everybody clear on that? I'm sorry I didn't say that sooner. All right. So next one is Tammy Rice, Business Administrator 2 in the DPW. Current pay rate, $29.69 an hour, 2.8 to $30.02 an hour. Tim Davis, Recreation Director. Current pay rate, $39.82 an hour, 2.8 to $40.31 an hour. Denise Mayer, Administrative Assistant in the Recreation Department, from a current rate of $20.21 an hour to 2.8 to $20.38 an hour. Alexandra Officer, Program Coordinator, Recreation, $26.12 an hour, 2.8 to a new rate of $26.41 an hour. Cynthia Henderson Beard, Outreach Coordinator, Senior Center, $34.89 an hour, 2.8 to $35.87 per hour. Lorraine Caporal, Administrative Assistant, Senior Center, current rate $19.18 an hour, 2.8 to $19.69 an hour. Leslie Chamberlain, Senior center nurse, $45.43 an hour, 2.8 to 46.70. And as we've noted in the past with Ms. Chamberlain, she is above the maximum for her grade. Just want to note that. Not anything we're going to do about it at this point. She's been out of range for her grade for quite some time. Pam LaFrancois, Senior Center Director, Council on Aging. Current pay rate, $40.74 an hour, 2.8 to $41.88 an hour. Margaret Leonard, Senior Center Program Manager, $30.51 an hour, 2.8 to $31.08 an hour. Tom LaFlamme, IT Manager, Technology, $48.20 per hour, 2.8 to $48.71 an hour. Heidi Lindsay, Assistant Town Accountant, $28.82 an hour, 2.8 to $29.50 per hour. Amy Berry, Assistant Town Clerk, $29.30 per hour, 2.8 to $29.81 per hour. David Beery, Assistant Treasurer Collector, $25.51 per hour, 2.8 to a proposed rate of $25.79 an hour. Kristen Pasakane, Business Administrator 1 in the Treasurer Collector's Office, $27.98, increase 2.8 to a new rate of $28.23 an hour. Sarah Castle, Director, Youth and Family Services, $36.54 an hour, 2.8 to 37 even, $37 an hour. Megan Eland, Assistant Director, Youth and Family Service, $27.40 an hour, 2.8 to $28.13 an hour. Shannon Knaman, Program Coordinator, Youth and Family Services, pay rate $25.06 an hour, 2.8 to a new rate of $25.59 an hour. Chair will entertain a motion to approve the increases as read into the record.
So move.
All right, second.
You don't
All
mind
right.
repeating?
It'll be a roll call vote. Mr. Dietz,
Yes,
Ms. Jazinski,
Yes.
Mr. Nixon,
Yes.
Mr. Rubenstein,
Yes.
Ms. Rosenblum. Yes, it is unanimous. Thank you all. So I think that was our last order of business for today. I would like, just to wrap up, everybody's going to send me their committee and board and department preferences for liaison. I'll sort those out. We will meet here, hopefully, more briefly next week to discuss. We don't want to lose the momentum on the new liaison program and get on some common ground before we go out to talk to the different departments about what we'd like to see. Anything else? Yes, Ms. Hale.
Sorry, I just wanted to thank all the board members for taking those votes today. There's still a lot of work to be done on the payroll side that, you know, Kristen and Brian are obviously instrumental in. So this gives us a head start to dig in there. Thank you.
All right. Any comments, questions, or concerns about the after part? Brian, Kristen, do you need anything from us? You listened to the meeting. Do you need me to follow up in writing with anything?
No, I think we're got, the next step is Vanessa will have the approval memos written up. And then in the meantime, we can coordinate getting the retros done, but that's all on our side. It's okay.
Okay, and feel free to check back with us next week, same time next week at noontime if there's follow-up, or obviously before then, you know where to find me.
Will do.
All right. Anybody have anything else?
I think I'm good.
Everybody good? Okay, we'll see you back here next week. Thanks, everybody. And we are adjourned at 1:45 p.m. Thank you all.